The closer you get to most people, the weaker you become. The Stoics understood why distance is actually power, and this will change how you see relationships forever. Everyone tells you that connecting with people is important, that you need a big social circle, that isolation is bad for you. And sure, meaningful connections matter, but here's what nobody talks about. Most of your connections aren't meaningful. They're draining you. They're pulling you down. They're making you weaker every single day. And you don't even realize it because you think being close to people is always good. The Stoics knew something different. They understood that strategic distance from most people is actually what makes you powerful. Before we go deeper, if you've ever felt like people drain your energy, or if you've noticed you're stronger when you're alone, drop a comment. Hit that like button if you're ready to hear something most people won't tell you, and subscribe because this kind of truth is what we're all about here. So why does keeping distance make you stronger? Because most people are operating at a low frequency, and when you're too close to them, they pull you down to their level. They complain and you start complaining. They make excuses, and suddenly your excuses seem reasonable too. They waste time, and you find yourself wasting time with them. The gossip and drama and negativity become normal to you because that's what you're surrounded by. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the things you think about determine the quality of your mind. But when you're constantly around people who think small thoughts, have low standards, and operate from weakness, those things seep into your mind, whether you want them to or not. You become like the people you spend the most time with. That's not opinion, that's observable reality. Here's what happens when you're too close to too many people. You start caring about things that don't matter, what they think of you, what they're doing, what drama is happening in their lives. Your mental space gets cluttered with other people's opinions, problems, and energy, and there's less room for your own thoughts, your own goals, your own development. Let me break down the specific ways distance makes you stronger. First, it protects your energy. Every interaction costs energy. Some people give energy back through meaningful conversation or genuine support, but most people, they just take. They dump their problems on you. They need constant validation. They create drama that you get pulled into. They have the same issues over and over and expect you to care every single time. When you keep distance, you're not available for all of that. Your energy stays with you. You can invest it in things that actually matter. Your work, your goals, your growth, your peace of mind. The Stoics were fanatical about guarding their inner peace. Epictetus taught that you should protect your mind like the most valuable treasure you own. But you can't do that when you're constantly accessible to people who disrupt that peace. Second benefit of distance is clarity. When you're too enmeshed in other people's lives and opinions, you lose touch with what you actually think and want. You're so busy considering everyone else's perspective that you forget to develop your own. You make decisions based on what others will think instead of what's actually right for you. You pursue goals that look good to your social circle instead of goals that genuinely matter to you. Distance gives you space to hear your own thoughts, to figure out who you are without the constant input and influence of others. Seneca wrote extensively about the importance of solitude for this exact reason. He knew that you can't develop wisdom and clarity while you're constantly surrounded by noise. You need quiet, you need distance, you need time away from the crowd to become yourself. Third way distance creates strength is by revealing who actually matters. When you step back from people, you quickly see who reaches out because they value you versus who only contacted you because you were convenient or useful. Most people will disappear when you're not constantly available. And that's information you need. Those aren't real relationships. Those are transactions or habits disguised as friendships. The few people who remain, who make effort to stay connected, even when you're not right there, those are the ones worth investing in. The Stoics understood that quality over quantity applies to everything, especially relationships. Marcus Aurelius had thousands of people around him as emperor, but he wrote about being grateful for the handful of people who actually mattered. He knew that most human connection is shallow and that deep connection is rare. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Being too available makes you less valuable. When you're always there, always responding, always willing to drop everything for others, they stop appreciating it. You become expected, taken for granted, used. But when you have boundaries, when there's some distance, when people have to actually make an effort to get your time and attention, suddenly you become more valuable to them. This isn't manipulation. This is human nature. People don't value what's freely and constantly available. The Stoics understood this about everything in life. Scarcity creates value. When your time and energy are scarce because you're protecting them, people treat them with more respect. When you're always accessible, you train people to disrespect your boundaries because you've shown them there are no consequences for doing so. Let's talk about how other people's expectations weaken you. The more connected you are to people, the more expectations they have. They expect you to respond quickly, to be available when they need something, to care about their problems, to show up for their events, to validate their choices. And if you don't meet these expectations, they get upset. They guilt trip you, they call you a bad friend or selfish or distant. So you bend yourself to meet their expectations. You say yes when you want to say no. You give attention when you need to focus on yourself. You sacrifice your priorities for theirs, and with every compromise, you get weaker. You lose touch with your own needs. You become a version of yourself designed to please others, rather than being true to who you actually are. Distance eliminates most of these expectations. When people know you're not constantly available, they stop expecting constant availability. When they know you have boundaries, they stop expecting you to violate them. And the ones who can't accept your boundaries, they remove themselves, which is actually a blessing because those are the people who are weakening you the most. Marcus Aurelius talked about how we're disturbed not by things, but by our opinions about things. When you're too close to people, you absorb their opinions. Their fears become your fears. Their limitations become your limitations. Their negativity becomes your negativity. You start believing things about yourself and the world that aren't even your own beliefs. They're just ideas you picked up from people around you. Distance gives you the space to examine these borrowed beliefs and decide which ones actually serve you. Most of them don't. Most of the limiting thoughts you have about what's possible or what you deserve or what you're capable of, you learned from people who had their own limitations and projected them onto you. When you step back, you can finally see clearly and reject the beliefs that don't belong to you. Here's something else distance does. It forces you to become self-reliant. When you're constantly surrounded by people, you outsource your emotional regulation to them. You need them to make you feel better when you're down. You need their validation when you're unsure. You need their presence to avoid being alone with your thoughts. You become dependent on external sources for your internal state. But when you practice distance, you learn to provide these things for yourself. You develop internal strength. You become comfortable with solitude. You learn to validate yourself instead of needing it from others. You face your own thoughts and work through them instead of distracting yourself with social interaction. This self-reliance is true power. The Stoics knew that depending on external things for your well-being is a form of slavery. Freedom comes from needing nothing outside yourself to be okay. Now let's address the fear that keeps people from creating distance. You're afraid of being alone. You're afraid people will forget about you. You're afraid you'll miss out on something important. You're afraid of being seen as antisocial or weird. So you stay connected even when those connections are draining you. You stay available even when it costs you your peace. You prioritize other people's comfort over your own strength. Epictetus would say, this fear is enslaving you. You're letting the fear of other people's opinions control your choices. You're sacrificing your own development because you're worried about what people might think if you create some distance. But here's the reality. The people who matter will understand and respect your boundaries. The people who don't understand were never actually adding value to your life anyway. Here's the hard truth. You're probably too accessible right now. You're probably too involved in other people's lives and drama. You're probably letting people take up space in your mind and schedule who haven't earned that access, and it's making you weaker. Every day you spend your energy on shallow connections, pointless conversations, and other people's chaos is a day you're not investing in becoming stronger. The Stoics weren't antisocial, they had relationships, but they were extremely selective about who they let close and how much energy they gave to social obligations. Marcus Aurelius had to interact with thousands of people, but he maintained internal distance even in those interactions. He didn't let everyone's problems become his problems. He didn't let everyone's opinions affect his peace. That's what you need to learn. Physical distance when possible, mental and emotional distance always. You can be polite, cordial, even friendly with people without letting them into your inner world, without giving them the power to disrupt your peace, without becoming entangled in their drama and dysfunction. Distance is not about being cold or uncaring. It's about being selective and protective of your energy, time, and mental space. It's about recognizing that not everyone deserves close access to you. It's about understanding that your strength comes from within, and maintaining that strength requires boundaries that most people aren't willing to set. The Stoics built their philosophy around self-mastery and inner strength. They knew that you can't master yourself if you're constantly being influenced and drained by others. They knew that real power comes from self-reliance, not from a large social network. They knew that solitude and distance aren't things to fear, but tools to develop wisdom and clarity. Start creating distance today. Not from everyone, but from the people and situations that drain you without adding real value. Stop being so available. Stop saying yes to social obligations that don't serve you. Stop letting people's drama and problems become yours. Protect your energy like your life depends on it, because in many ways, it does. You'll lose some people when you create distance. That's okay. They weren't meant to be in your life anyway. The right people will respect your boundaries and value you more for having them. And most importantly, you'll gain something far more valuable than any shallow connection. You'll gain yourself, your strength, your clarity, your peace. The Stoics knew that the path to true strength is often a lonely one. Not because you're isolated from everyone, but because you're selective about who walks it with you. Most people won't understand. Most people will think you've changed or become distant. Let them think that. Your job isn't to maintain relationships that weaken you. Your job is to become the strongest version of yourself, and that requires distance from anything and anyone that prevents that transformation.